Welcome to the Psychology Undergrad.
The only study group where you don't actually have to leave your apartment, put on real pants, or pretend you've done all the reading.
Speak for yourself on the pants situation. But yes, welcome back. I'm your host, and I need to be transparent with everyone right now.
Uh-oh.
I am currently operating on a physiological deficit. I've got about 4 hours of sleep in the bank, and my bloodstream is, I'm pretty sure, roughly 90% espresso.
I am right there with you in the exhaustion boat. This time of the semester. It's survival mode. We are cramming.
We are absolutely cramming. We have this massive conceptual module coming up on the intersection of, well, everything. Psychology, religion, family systems.
All the heavy hitters.
And I'm looking at this stack of papers on the desk right now.
And it is intimidating. It's thick.
It's heavy, but, and I know I say this a lot, it is also incredibly fascinating stuff. We're finally moving away from the basic, introduction to psych definitions.
We aren't just memorizing parts of the brain anymore. We are getting into the deep end of how these huge abstract belief systems actually rewire family dynamics.
Right. It's the stuff that actually affects people's day-to-day lives. But before we even crack open the first paper, Marx and Dollahite, I'm looking at you, we need to address the elephant in the room.
Or rather, the fatigue in the room.
The fatigue in the room, the undergrad reality. Look, we sit here and we talk about cognitive function, memory retention, synaptic plasticity, all this cool stuff. But what is the number one thing that just kills all of that?
Oh, lack of sleep. Without a doubt. It's not even a debate. If you don't sleep, you don't encode memory. It's that simple.
It's that simple. And let's be honest, those dorm mattresses,
awful,
or that cheap IKEA mattress you bought off Craigslist 3 years ago that has a permanent dent in the middle, they are not helping the situation.
Not at all.
That is why we are genuinely hyped to be partnering with Cozy Earth for this session.
This has been a serious game changer for me. I'm not even kidding.
If you want to actually retain the info we're about to go over, you need quality sleep. And Cozy Earth, they have these bamboo sheet sets that are ridiculous. And I mean that in the best possible way.
They are legitimately the softest sheets I've ever felt. But the science part that I geek out about is the temperature regulation.
Yes.
I'm a hot sleeper. I always have been. These things breed. So you aren't waking up drenched in sweat in the middle of some fever dream about ANOVA tables.
Which is a recurring nightmare for me, so thank you for that image. But seriously, they really do help you get the best night of sleep, which is just essential for studying. And we know, look, we're students. We get it. Luxury sheets usually aren't in the budget.
No, they're usually very expensive. It's like, do I buy this textbook or do I buy nice sheets?
Right. You have to choose. So Cozy Earth hooked us up for you. You can get a 21% discount. You just have to use the promo code PSYC101.
PSYC101. Super easy to remember.
Go to cozyearth.com/discount PSYC101. Treat yourself, your GPA, and more importantly, your REM cycle will thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Sheets on the bed, coffee in hand. Are you ready to dive in? Let's look at the syllabus for today.
Okay, so the syllabus for this cram session is this stack of papers, and they're all focused on a really specific intersection: spirituality, religion, and traditional values.
Right.
And how those things impact the nitty-gritty of family life. We're talking health outcomes, romantic relationships, parenting styles, the works.
And the mission here, as I see it, is to get past the boring surface-level stats. You see those headlines on the news or in a textbook. 70% of people identify as religious.
And as a psych student, my reaction is usually, okay, cool number, but so what?
Precisely. So what is the right question?
Yeah.
We need to dig into the mechanisms. We aren't just asking if religion changes behavior. We're asking how and why. What is the actual psychological process happening when someone prays or attends a service or follows a traditional ritual?
It's basically this huge tension between science, hard data, charts, p-values, the stuff we love, and spirituality, which is all mystery and faith and things you can't really touch or quantify.
Yeah, how do we use the scientific method to measure something as abstract as sacredness or divine intervention?
That is the million-dollar question. And to answer it, we are starting with a paper by Marx and Dollahite from 2011. It's titled, Mining the Meanings and Pulling Out the Processes.
Which sounds less like a psychology paper and more like a geology textbook or something.
It sort of is. That's the entire metaphor they use. They introduce this really useful concept called correlation mountain.
Okay, let's unpack this. Correlation mountain. Because I feel like in Psych 101, we are basically taught to worship the correlation.
For sure.
Correlation does not equal causation. That's tattooed on our brains. But it's still the holy grail of a lot of data.
It is, but what Marx and Dollahite are saying is that it's not enough. So they want you to imagine we are all sitting on top of this giant mountain.
Okay.
This mountain is built out of thousands and thousands of quantitative studies. These are all the surveys, the Likert scales, rate your happiness on a scale of 1 to 5, the big data sets,
All the numbers.
all the numbers. And the view from up here on top of the mountain is great. We can see the landscape clearly. We can see that, okay, religion is linked to better health. We can see it's linked to marital stability.
We see the connection. Variable A connects to variable B.
Right. But we are sitting on top of the mountain. We don't know what's inside it. The quantitative data tells us that these things are connected, but it doesn't tell us why. It doesn't explain the mechanism.
It's the classic black box problem.
Yeah.
We see the input, let's say religious attendance, and the output lower blood pressure. But the middle part is a total mystery.
Exactly. Why does going to church lower your blood pressure? A survey can't tell you that. It just tells you that the numbers match up over a large population.
So Marx and Dollahite argue that we need to stop just enjoying the view from Correlation Mountain, and we need to start digging a mine shaft.
A mine shaft.
We need to drill straight down into the mountain to find the gold. And the gold here is the processes and the meanings, the actual why behind the correlation.
And to do that, you can't just send out a SurveyMonkey link to 10,000 people.
No. You need different tools. You need qualitative research. And they outline this specific toolkit for studying the unseen. The first tool in the kit is something called triangulation.
Triangulation.
Specifically in a family context.
This makes so much sense to me because think about all the old school psychology research we've studied, even the classic stuff from last semester. Who did they usually interview when they wanted to know about a family?
The mother, almost exclusively. It was the default.
Right. They'd ask the mom, so how is the family doing? And she'd say, oh, we're great. Dinner was on time. The kids are alive. And the researchers would write down in their notes, family is functioning perfectly.
Meanwhile, the dad is stressed out of his mind about the mortgage, and the teenager is in the basement plotting a full-scale rebellion, but none of that data gets captured.
It's missing. That's the huge flaw of the single perspective. So triangulation fixes this by getting multiple data points on the same object, on the same family.
You interview the mother, the father, and the adolescent children separately. You get all their stories.
And then you lay them all out and compare the notes to see where they overlap and, more importantly, where they contradict.
Exactly. It gives you a 3D picture instead of a flat photograph.
Yeah.
There's a great example in the reading. Did you get to the part about Joseph and Julie?
Oh, I loved this part. I highlighted it because it shows how two people can be in the exact same religious marriage and experience it in completely different ways.
Walk us through it. What's Joseph's deal?
So Joseph is the dad. And when the researchers ask him about his faith and how it impacts his parenting, he gets really, really serious. He talks about needing to represent truth.
That's a heavy phrase.
It is. He has this intense internal pressure. He says something like, if I slam my thumb in the car door, do I freak out and start swearing, or do I have faith? He sees himself as this standard bearer for the entire belief system.
Right. He feels the weight of that responsibility. He's focused on his own behavior as a model of capital T truth. But then you talk to Julie, the mom. And does she talk about truth or doctrine?
Not at all. She talks about him. She talks about the relationship. Her focus is totally different. She says, Joseph is an excellent role model. The kids respect him.
She sees the relational side of it. She says something about if a kid grows up with a father who is loving and strong, it's easier for them to understand God. Her focus is on the emotional outcome for the kids.
So here is the aha moment for me. If you only interviewed Joseph, you'd get a picture of a guy who is very focused on rules, maybe a little bit rigid, totally focused on this abstract idea of truth.
You might even think he's cold or distant.
Maybe. And if you only interviewed Julie, you'd get this picture of a happy, well-adjusted family dynamic, but you wouldn't understand the psychological cost. You wouldn't see the internal pressure that Joseph is under to create that environment.
But when you triangulate, you see the mechanism. You see how his internal pressure to be true creates the external environment of stability that she appreciates.
You get the whole picture of what they mean by a Christ-centered home. It's not just they are religious, it's his anxiety about being a good role model creates her feeling of security.
That is the gold in the mine shaft.
Yeah.
You never, ever get that from a survey that asks, how often do you pray as a family?
Never. There's another example that really cracked me up. Earl and Tiffany.
The African-American Baptist couple.
Yes.
This felt like I was listening to a real couple bickering.
It was so real. So Earl is trying to be very deep and poetic for the interviewers. He's telling them, we are married, we are supposed to be one, it's about unity. He's going for the big spiritual ideal.
The textbook answer.
The textbook answer. And Tiffany.
Tiffany is having none of it. She immediately cuts in and says, we're just different, and they both just start laughing.
Yeah, and Earl has to pivot and admit, yeah, we battle. She doesn't like my differences. I don't like hers. It totally shatters the perfect image he was trying to paint.
But then, and this is why you need the triangulation, why you need to let them talk, they circle back. Earl says, but we took a sacred vow.
Right. And Tiffany agrees. That's the anchor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So triangulation captures that banter. It captures the reality that a sacred marriage isn't this perfect conflict-free zone.
Mm-hmm.
It's two very different people annoying each other, but sticking together because of a deeper promise.
A survey would just mark a box that says, married, satisfied. The interview shows us the texture of that satisfaction. It shows us that the satisfaction exists despite the annoyance because of the vow.
You see the process, not just the outcome. Okay, so that's tool number one, triangulation. Don't trust just one source. What is tool number two?
Tool number two is progressive questioning.
Which sounds a little like an interrogation technique from a cop show. Where were you on the night of the 15th?
It kind of is. They compare it to a legal cross-examination, but, gentler. The problem it's designed to solve is something we all know about, the halo effect.
Which is basically people lying to look good.
Basically. It's social desirability bias, especially with a topic like religion. In the U.S., religion is generally seen as a good thing to be. So if you ask someone, is faith important to you? What are they going to say?
Yes, of course.
And if you ask, how often do you go to church? People tend to over-report their attendance because they feel like they should go, even if they don't.
So the data gets skewed by people wanting to present their ideal self, not their actual self.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to look like good, pious people.
Right. So progressive questioning means you don't stop at that first easy answer. If someone says, my faith is very important to me, the researcher doesn't just check a box and move on.
They push back.
They push back. They say, okay, that's interesting. Can you give me a specific example of when your faith helped you cope with a crisis in the last month?
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Show me the evidence.
Exactly. Oh, faith is important. Tell me how it changed your decision-making yesterday when you were stuck in traffic. If they can't answer, the first response was just fluff.
But when they can answer, that's when you find incredible things. The paper gives the story of Oida, a Latina Mormon mother.
I remember Ada. The interviewer asks her if religious practices are special in her family, and she gives the standard answer, yes, church is special.
Which is a generic throwaway line. A survey would stop right there and code it as positive religious sentiment.
But the interviewer pushes, why is it special? What makes it different from other family activities?
And that's when the real psychology comes out. Ada opens up and admits that she didn't have family prayer when she was growing up.
Wow.
She says, if my family had done this, it would be a fond memory, but we never did.
Oh, wow. So for her, it's not just about being religious in the present. It's about reparative psychology. She's trying to fix the legacy of her own childhood for her kids.
Precisely. She wants to create the memory for them that she wishes she had. You never get to that realization, that deep reparative motivation, if you just ask the simple yes-no question. You have to ask why, and then why that.
So the big takeaway for us, as lowly undergrads cramming for this exam, is that good psychology, especially when it comes to something as personal as religion, isn't just about the stats. It's about the narrative.
We need the story.
We need the story to understand the behavior.
And speaking of stories and different ways of viewing the world, that leads us perfectly into the next section of our cram session. We're moving from the how-to of methodology to a specific cultural application.
Okay.
We need to talk about John Redhorse's 1997 paper on traditional American Indian family systems.
This paper. Honestly, this one hit me the hardest. It challenges pretty much everything we learn in Western developmental psych. It just flips the entire script.
It really does. And he starts with this incredibly vivid scene. It's at a wild rice festival in Minneapolis.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So imagine a hot, crowded powwow ground. An Anishinaabe family pulls up in a beat-up old station wagon. It looks like total chaos: suitcases, folding chairs, coolers, everyone unloading at once. It looks disorganized.
Classic family road trip vibes, but with more feathers and beadwork.
Exactly. But then they go inside to the dance arena, and the mother takes her 3-year-old son, who is dressed in full regalia as a grass dancer, and she places him gently on a star quilt on the ground.
And that is the first time the strangers in the room, the outsiders, realize The boy is disabled. He's paralyzed from the waist down.
Right. And Redhorse describes the reaction of the strangers versus the reaction of the community. The strangers look at him with pity. They feel sorry for him. They see the deficit. They see what he can't do.
But the community,
Mm.
the family, the cousins, the elders, they form what he calls a circle of care.
A circle of care.
They hold him when he gets tired. They carry him to the snack stands. They make sure he's part of everything. And when the drums start for the dance, the boy dances. He dances from the waist up, keeping perfect time with his head and shoulders.
And he enters the contest, which just shocks the outsiders.
They can't believe it, but the community is proud. And Redhorse uses this story to distinguish between two key concepts: inclusion and tolerance.
This is such a huge distinction. Tolerance is what we often aim for in Western society. We say things like, we will tolerate your presence, we will make an accessible ramp for you, we will let you sit there.
Right. It's passive. It's putting up with, it still frames the person as an other that we have to accommodate.
But in traditional indigenous systems, Redhorse argues, it's inclusion. And it goes even deeper than just behavior. Often, a disability isn't framed as a deficit at all. It's framed as a spiritual strength.
Yeah, the reading mentioned that in some traditions, being touched by the spirits or having a physical difference meant you had special power or a unique connection to the spiritual world.
So you aren't a burden to the community. You're a vital, unique piece of the spiritual puzzle. Your difference is a gift.
And this leads to his critique of how Western professionals like us, eventually, if we survive grad school, interact with these communities. He calls it the Cook's Tour.
I loved this phrase, the Cook's Tour. It sounds like a bad travel show from the 70s.
It essentially is. He's describing when social workers or psychologists or government officials go to the reservation headquarters. They see the shiny new administrative buildings, the computers, the offices at Window Rock for the Navajo Nation or Onamia for Milisox.
And they look at all this and they think, oh, look, they're assimilated. They're just like us now.
They think the culture is gone because the facade looks modern. Oh, they have iPhones and drive pickup trucks, so their psychology must be Western now.
But Redhorse says that's the tour. The real culture isn't in the administrative center. He says, drive a few miles down the road. Go to the isolated family camps. Go to the small villages where people are still living in hogans or traditional housing. That is where the culture lives.
And it operates on a completely different operating system than Western psychology.
Totally different. He talks about these 5 value domains, which are worth knowing. It's things like relationship to nature, time perspective, relations with people. But the part that really blew my mind was the upside-down hierarchy.
Yes. The critique of Maslow. This is fundamental and will definitely be on the exam.
For sure.
Okay, so for everyone listening who might have slept through that part of Psych 101, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a pyramid.
The foundation, the biggest part at the bottom, is physiological needs: food, water, shelter. Then comes safety. Then love and belonging. Then esteem. And at the very, very tippy top of the pyramid, you have self-actualization.
Which is where we usually put things like spirituality, creativity, finding your true self. The Western idea is you can't worry about the meaning of life if you are starving.
Right. You can't be spiritual until you've eaten lunch and paid your rent. That's the Western model. But Redhorse describes this group of Navajo elders who were studying Western psychology to see what might be useful.
And they looked at Freud and Erikson and disagreed with the focus on individual defects, but they liked Carl Rogers.
Yeah, they liked unconditional positive regard that fit perfectly with their kinship and respect models.
But then they get to Maslow's pyramid and they're just confused. They look at it and then they say, this is backwards.
It's literally upside down. For them, self-actualization, which is really spirituality and connection to the creator and community, is the base. It's the foundation of the entire pyramid.
It's the first thing you need, not the last.
Right. You cannot truly address food or shelter or safety without a spiritual core. Spirituality isn't a luxury you get to when you're rich and successful. It's the thing that allows you to exist and persevere through hardship.
That is such a fundamental shift. It changes everything. Imagine you're a therapist treating a native client. If you go in there with a Maslow mindset, trying to fix their housing situation first while ignoring their spiritual disconnection,
you're building a house on sand. You are trying to put the roof on before you've poured the foundation. You're missing the entire point.
And this different operating system extends to how they view family development, too. Think about how we view growing up in America.
It's linear, a straight line. You are a child, you are dependent on your parents, you grow up, you go through adolescence, and the goal is to become independent.
You leave home. You go to college. You get a job. You start your own separate nuclear family. Success equals independence. If you are 30 and living with your parents, Western psychology often labels that as a problem, failure to launch.
Exactly. That is the Western linear model. Redhorse argues that traditional indigenous development is circular or relational.
So as you grow up, you don't become independent from the family unit.
No, you become more responsible to the network. Age correlates with increased dependency on the network and increased responsibility to it.
So the older you get, the more entangled and connected you are, not less.
Yes. The older you get, the more people rely on you for wisdom, for resources, for guidance, and the more you rely on the web of kin for your identity and support. There's that story in the paper of the Pueblo man. He was a rising star in his corporate career, making good money, living the American dream.
And the elders came calling?
Yep. They selected him for a key spiritual leadership role in the community. And he had a choice: keep the corporate career, the money, and the linear path of success, or quit his job to serve the community.
In the Western model, quitting your high-paying job to go live in the village and lead ceremonies is regression. It's failure. Your parents would be like, what are you doing?
But in the indigenous model, it was the ultimate promotion.
Yeah.
It was the definition of maturity. It was him finally stepping into his true role.
And he chose the community, obviously. He realized that his linear success was actually spiritual stagnation.
It really makes you rethink what we consider success or health in psychology. Are we trying to make people independent individuals?
Right.
Or are we trying to make them deeply connected parts of a whole?
That is the question. And speaking of success, connection, and, well, vitality, let's pivot to our next major topic. We're going back to the Marx and Dollahite material, but we're focusing on a specific staggering statistic.
Okay.
We call this section the mystery of the 13.7 years.
This number made me double take when I first read it. I had to read the sentence 3 times. 13.7 years.
It's from a study by Hummer and a few others, and they found that African Americans who attend religious services twice a week or more live, on average, 13.7 years longer than non-attenders.
That is a massive number. Think about the medical industry. If Pfizer or Moderna invented a pill that guaranteed you 14 extra years of life,
It would be the most expensive, most sought-after drug on the planet.
it would be a trillion-dollar industry. People would do anything for that pill. But here, the pill is just going to church. And again, as good psychology students, we have to ask, why?
What is the mechanism? It's not magic. It can't be. It has to be something biopsychosocial that we can measure and understand.
Right. We can't just write, God did it on the exam and expect to get points.
Right.
We need the psychological mechanism. So the paper dives into the qualitative interviews to find the why behind that number.
And one of the first themes that emerges is vitality and purpose.
Right. They talk to people like this 85-year-old mother.
Yeah.
In a secular context, an 85-year-old person might feel sidelined. They're retired. Maybe they feel like a burden to their kids. Their role in society has diminished.
But in the church, she's an usher. She's a mother of the church. She is needed. She has a job to do.
If she doesn't show up on Sunday, who is going to hand out the programs? Who is going to greet the visitors at the door? Her absence is felt.
Exactly. She has a role. She has a purpose. And we know from tons of other research that having a sense of purpose boosts your immune function. That psychological sense of, I am needed here on Sunday, keeps the biology going. It literally keeps her alive.
And that makes total sense. Purpose is a huge predictor of longevity across the board. But there's a grittier side to this, too. The second theme they found was evading the street life.
Yeah, this came up a lot in the interviews with African-American families, particularly those in urban or high-risk environments. It's not just about what you do at church, the prayer, the singing. It's about what you don't do because you're there.
One of the participants, a guy named Ty, put it very bluntly. He said, if you aren't in church, you might be among the wrong individuals, get shot, and die.
It's a powerful form of behavioral modification. It's what some sociologists call time displacement theory. If you are at Bible study on Tuesday night and you're at choir practice on Thursday night and you're at service all day Sunday,
Where are you not?
you aren't at the bar, you aren't hanging out on the corner, you aren't engaging in high-risk behaviors that could lead to violence, substance abuse, or accidents.
And you aren't self-medicating. Which leads directly to the third theme, coping. Specifically, the power of prayer, but framed as the psychological benefit of laying cares down.
This is basically a stress management technique. One participant, Florence, she talked about laying your cares on the Lord. Think about the cortisol levels of someone living in a high-stress environment, maybe dealing with poverty, maybe systemic racism, maybe neighborhood violence.
That chronic stress kills you. We know this from biology. It destroys your cardiovascular system. It weakens your immune system.
We know this. Chronic cortisol is a killer. But if you have a genuine belief system that allows you to feel that a higher power is carrying that burden for you,
Your body relaxes. Your sympathetic nervous system stands down. Your blood pressure drops. It's a form of cognitive offloading. You are externalizing the stress to what you perceive as a divine container.
there was that quote from another participant, Shayla, that stuck with me. She said, "I think one of the worst things people do is give up on faith. They have no hope."
And hope is a powerful biological agent. It changes your brain chemistry. So when you combine the social support and purpose, the behavioral protection, and the cognitive coping mechanism,
You get a biopsychosocial hybrid that results in 13.7 extra years of life.
it's fascinating. It's not just one thing. It's the whole package.
Exactly. Okay, now let's zoom in a little bit. We've looked at the individual lifespan. Let's look at the relationships within that life, specifically marriage and parenting.
This is section 4 on our syllabus, the threefold cord.
This is more from the Marx and Dollahite material. Let's start with the parenting side, specifically communicating with teenagers, because that is, for most families, a complete disaster zone.
Usually. And the research identified a very clear trap that religious parents often fall into. They call it the preachy parent trap.
Oh, I felt so bad for Jack. Poor Jack. He was 18. He talked about his parents slamming Bible verses in their kids' faces whenever there was a problem.
It's a communication shutdown. The moment the parent starts dominating the conversation with doctrine or lectures, the kid tunes out. It becomes hierarchical. I am the speaker of truth. You are the empty vessel to be filled.
And it triggers reactance. The kid's natural response is just to rebel against the lecture, even if the advice is good.
But then you have the success stories. Like this young woman, Alicia, who was 20. She said she actually liked talking about religion with her mom. And the reason why was because it was casual.
It was interactive, it was youth-centered, the mom didn't lecture, she shared her own stories of doubt and struggle. She treated Alicia like a peer in the conversation, not a student in a classroom.
That is the friend-casual model of success. And it applies to any parenting, really, not just religious parenting. If you want your kid to listen, stop lecturing.
Lesson learned. Now, what about the marriage side? This is where that metaphor, the threefold cord, comes in.
It's a metaphor from the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible. The verse is, a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. In a purely secular marriage, you have 2 strands, the husband and the wife. If they pull apart, the bond can break.
But in a religious marriage, the third strand is God.
Right. So the marriage isn't just a social contract between 2 people, it's a triangle, husband, wife, and God. That third strand adds a huge amount of structural integrity to the bond.
And this plays out in tangible ways, like through rituals. I loved the description of Sarah, the Jewish mother. She talks about the Sabbath.
Friday night, the candles are lit, work is turned off, the phones are put away.
She calls it a sanctuary in time. And think about that psychologically for a second. Modern life is a blur of stress and notifications and work emails at 10 p.m. I check my phone every 30 seconds.
Me too.
But having a mandatory, non-negotiable pause button every single week where you have to stop and just look at your family, that is a huge tool for relationship maintenance.
It forces connection. You can't be too busy for your spouse. If you believe God commands you to stop working on Friday night, it solves the time famine problem that most modern couples have.
Then there's the concept of fidelity and sanctification. This is where we get the story about Omar.
This is such a specific, tangible example of a psychological mechanism at work. So Omar is a Muslim father, and he works in an office.
And apparently the office culture is a bit toxic.
A bit of a throwback.
A bit Mad Men, even today. He says the guys gather around to gossip, maybe oogle the women in the office, standard cringy locker room talk. Omar doesn't participate. Now, the simple explanation might be that he doesn't do it because his wife would be mad if she found out. But his wife isn't there. She'd never know.
Exactly. He doesn't avoid it because of his wife. He avoids it because of the book of life.
Yeah.
He has a genuine belief that every action, every word is being written down in his spiritual record by angels. He has accountability to the divine.
So it's like, I can't gossip about Susan from accounting because God is taking notes.
It sounds funny when you put it that way, but it's a powerful cognitive inhibitor. It's the concept of sanctification. He views his marriage as holy. You don't mess up something holy with cheap office gossip. It creates this powerful barrier against infidelity because the states are eternal, not just relational.
Wow. And finally, under this topic, conflict resolution. This one is tough for everyone.
Forgiveness. It's the hardest part of any long-term relationship. But the religious couples in the study seem to have a kind of cognitive shortcut.
What was it?
They had this belief that if you want to be forgiven by God, you must forgive your spouse.
It's leverage against your own ego. I'm imperfect, I screw up all the time, and I need God's grace. Therefore, I have to extend that same grace to my husband who just forgot to take out the trash for the 3rd time this week.
It lowers the ego. It makes forgiveness a divine requirement, not just an emotional state you have to wait for. It forces you to de-escalate the conflict.
Okay, speaking of de-escalation and, well, requirements, we need to talk about prayer. But not just prayer in the broad, vague sense. We need to get into the cognitive mechanics of it.
This is section 5, and it's based on the Fincham paper. I say a little prayer for you.
This stuff is fascinating because Fincham is looking at prayer not as a spiritual act, but as a cognitive intervention, like a form of therapy.
Exactly.
And before we get into the data from the paper, I have to share something. And please don't judge me.
No judgment in the study group. Ever.
Well, after reading this module, I started doing this myself.
Doing what?
Praying. Well, sort of.
You. The art skeptic?
I know. But here's the thing. When I sit down to study for this exam, my brain is just full of static. It's like, did I lock the front door? Is my roommate mad at me for not doing the dishes? Am I going to fail this test? What am I even doing with my life? It's just this wall of cognitive load.
Sure. Your working memory is completely cluttered with anxiety. There's no room for the actual material.
So I started doing this thing where I stop and I put it out there to the universe, to God, to whatever. I just say, okay, handle the roommate situation, handle the anxiety about the test. I'm giving it to you for the next hour.
You're externalizing the worry. You're offloading it.
Exactly. It's that laying cares down concept we talked about earlier with the 13.7 years. And weirdly, it works. It clears up my mental RAM so I can actually focus on the textbook. It's a cognitive tool for me.
That is exactly what Fincham is talking about. That's the mechanism. He starts by distinguishing between different types of prayer. There's ritual prayer, which is recited, like the Lord's Prayer. There's meditative prayer, which is more about contemplation. But he focuses on what's called colloquial petitionary prayer.
Which is just fancy psych talk for asking for help in your own words.
Right. God, please help me with this, or please bless my partner. And he applies this to couples using a framework called goal theory.
Okay, explain goal theory. This is definitely going to be on the test.
So when a couple gets into a fight, the goal of the interaction shifts. Ideally, in a healthy conversation, the goal is cooperation. We want to work together to solve the problem.
But when emotions get high, the goal shifts to winning or self-defense or even revenge.
I don't care about the actual problem with trash anymore. I just want you to admit you're wrong and that I'm superior.
Exactly. The lizard brain takes over. Fincham's research found that if you introduce an intervention, specifically, having one partner silently pray for the other partner's well-being, it forces a goal shift.
And to be clear, this isn't praying, God, please fix him because he's being so annoying and wrong.
Yeah. No. That's the critical key. It has to be a positive, benevolent prayer. God bless him. Help him have a good day. Help him flourish. You cannot simultaneously pray for someone's happiness and plot their destruction.
It creates cognitive dissonance. The brain can't hold both thoughts at the same time.
So the prayer reactivates the cooperative goals. It primes your brain to see your partner as someone to care for, not an enemy to defeat.
Precisely. It's a cognitive reset.
Yeah.
And the data backs it up completely. They ran experiments and found that prayer increases agape, which is selfless, altruistic love. It leads to higher rates of forgiveness. It even makes people happier about making sacrifices for their partner.
And the infidelity stat, that one was crazy.
Prayer significantly reduced the likelihood of cheating. And the effect was mediated by that sanctification concept we talked about with Omar. If you are praying for your partner every day, you are actively sanctifying the relationship in your own mind. You are less likely to betray someone you are actively blessing.
There was also the study about trust and joint prayer, right?
Right. They had couples pray together out loud, and then they had objective observers watch videos of these couples interacting. And the observers didn't know which couples were in the prayer group and which were in the control group. The observers consistently rated the couples who prayed together as having more trust and closeness in their interactions.
That is wild. You can actually see the effect from the outside.
It creates a shared vulnerability. If you are praying out loud with someone about your deepest fears and hopes, you are exposing your inner world. That builds trust like almost nothing else.
So Fincham took all this research and he created a program, the PFP.
The Prayer-Based Prevention Program. He took a group of African-American couples and used a standard evidence-based relationship course called PPP, the Prevention and Relationship Enhancement Program.
Okay.
One group got the standard PPP version, communication skills, active listening, all the usual therapy stuff. The other group got a prayer-focused version of PP.
And the results?
The prayer group showed faster initial change. And, more importantly, they maintained their gains much better. At the 12-month follow-up, they were still doing significantly better than the standard therapy group.
Why? Why did the prayer version work better than the secular therapy version?
Because prayer is portable.
Portable. I like that.
You can't take your therapist home with you. You can't call your therapist at 2 a.m. when you're having a huge fight about finances. But you can pray. It's free. It's available 24/7, and it's self-reinforcing. Every time you do it, you remind yourself of your relationship goals and values.
It's the ultimate self-help tool, just hidden in religious packaging.
In a way, yes. It empowers the couple to become their own therapists.
Wow. Okay, so let's zoom out. We've been all over the map today. We've climbed Correlation Mountain and dug a mineshaft for meaning.
We've been to the Wild Rice Festival and seen the power of inclusion over tolerance and turned Maslow's pyramid upside down.
We've seen how purpose and community can add, like, 13.7 years to your life. And we've seen how a simple prayer can mechanically shift your brain from a state of revenge to a state of cooperation.
It's a lot to process.
It is a lot. But here is the so what for us as psychology students. Why does any of this matter if we aren't religious ourselves? Or if our future patients aren't religious?
Because somewhere between 68 and 88% of the world is religious in some way. You cannot claim to understand human behavior if you ignore the single biggest variable in the room for the majority of the planet.
It's just bad science to ignore it.
It's bad science. Religion acts as a massive buffer against stress. It provides a pre-written script for conflict resolution. It builds the entire framework for family roles and meaning for billions of people.
If we ignore it, we're missing most of the data. We're sitting on top of the mountain enjoying the pretty view, but we aren't finding the gold.
Exactly.
So I want to leave everyone listening with a final thought, a provocative question to chew on before the exam. Okay, so we talked about the Book of Life and accountability. We talked about the threefold cord. We talked about Fincham's goal theory. If prayer works by shifting our cognitive goals from winning to cooperating,
Right. I see where you're going with this.
could a non-believer achieve the exact same results with a secular version? Could you just sit for 5 minutes and meditate on your partner's well-being and get the same benefit? Or is the belief itself the active ingredient? Does it only work because you think a divine power is actually listening and involved?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is it the behavior? Or is it the faith behind the behavior that makes it stick? Does the placebo work if you know it's a placebo?
I honestly don't know the answer, but I think that's what we're supposed to figure out in the next module. Or maybe that's just life.
For the rest of our careers.
Valid point. All right, class dismissed. Don't forget to do the reading for next time.
See you in the next lecture.
And seriously, go get those sheets. Use code PSYC101 at Cozy Earth. Get some actual sleep so you can remember all of this.
You're going to need it.
We all need it. Bye, everyone.